The sun bled across the Arizona badlands like a fresh wound when Jack Harlan finally saw the wigwams, 5 low domes of hide and willow rising beside a thread of green where the spring refused to die even in this killing year of drought. His tongue had turned to leather hours earlier, Dusty's ribs showed sharp beneath the hide, and the law had been dogging his backtrail since the botched drive outside Tombstone, so when the two figures stepped from the largest lodge he raised empty palms and spoke the only words that still had moisture in them, water for the horse and a place out of the wind, that's all I'm asking, no more. They were young, sisters by the matched darkness of their eyes and the way their braids swung in perfect mirror, Nita the elder with a face carved for judgment, Loma younger by perhaps 3 years yet already wearing the same quiet danger in the tilt of her chin. Nita spoke first, voice low and measured as a war drum heard far off, "Leave the colt on the saddle horn, white man, or turn around now while your horse can still carry you." Jack hesitated only long enough to feel the weight of the revolver he'd carried since he was 17, then unbuckled the belt and draped it over Dusty's pommel, the metal clinking once like a promise broken. Inside the lodge the air was thick with cedar smoke and the sweet char of roasting meat. They handed him a gourd of water so cold it made his teeth ache and followed it with a wooden bowl of venison stew laced with wild onion and red chili that burned all the way down and woke every sleeping nerve in his body. They sat across the small fire, knees drawn up, watching him eat with the patient attention of people who have already decided how the night will end. Loma broke the silence first, voice lighter than her sister's, almost playful. "You ride alone a long time, cowboy?" "Long enough," Jack answered, wiping his mouth with the back of his wrist. "Long enough that I don't much care whose fire I sit at so long as it's warm." Nita's gaze never left his face. "Warmth costs," she said simply. "Everything costs." They let him finish the stew, let him lean back against a rolled blanket and feel the first easing of the long day's ache, then Loma rose in one fluid motion and said, "Come outside. The moon is good tonight. We will show you something no white man has seen." Jack knew better. He knew the moment he stepped beyond the lodge flap that the night had teeth, yet the promise of cool air and the 2 women moving ahead of him like shadows given permission to walk pulled him forward anyway. The trail climbed behind the camp, narrow and strewn with broken shale that slid under his boot heels. They moved sure-footed as antelope while he felt every pound of trail dust and bad decisions dragging at his legs. At the crest the land fell away into a wide basin silvered by moonlight, and there, set into the cliff face like a secret kept for centuries, waited the dark mouth of a cave. Nita stopped, turned, and for the first time Jack saw the small obsidian knife already in her hand, blade catching the moon like a thin line of frost. Loma stepped close, too close, until he could smell the pine pitch she used to dress her hair. "You carry a map," she said, not asking. "A map drawn by a man who died screaming your name in a tombstone alley. A map that shows the way to our father's place, the place the yellow metal sleeps." Jack's heart slammed once, hard. He had never opened the parchment in their sight, never spoken of it, yet here it was between them like a third person who had been listening all along. "I don't know what you're talking about," he tried, but the lie tasted like ashes even before Nita answered. "We smelled the lie on you the moment you rode down the slope. We tasted it in the way you watched our hands instead of our faces. The map is in your right boot, folded small, the one the dying prospector pressed into your palm when he knew he would not see another sunrise." Loma's fingers were already moving, quick and certain, sliding inside the boot top while Nita's knife rested feather-light against the side of his throat, just enough pressure to remind him how easily skin parts. The parchment came free, moon-white in Loma's palm. She unfolded it carefully, traced one finger along the charcoal lines, then looked up at him with eyes that held no anger, only a deep and ancient patience. "This cave," Nita said, nodding toward the black opening behind them, "holds the bones of our father and the gold he guarded until the last breath. Men like you have come before. They always leave lighter than they arrived." Jack swallowed, felt the steel kiss his skin again. "I didn't come for gold," he said, and this time the words were almost true. "I came for a night's sleep and water." The map was just something that fell into my hands. Loma laughed then, soft and startling in the still night, a sound like water running over smooth stone. Everything falls into someone's hands, Cowboy. The question is what they do when it lands there. They did not kill him. Not then. Instead they led him into the cave mouth, Nita's knife never more than a heartbeat away, Loma carrying the map like a trophy. Inside the air turned cool and damp, the passage narrowed until they walked single file, Jack between them, the darkness so complete he had to trail his fingers along the wall to keep his balance. After perhaps 200 paces the tunnel opened into a chamber where moonlight found its way through a high crack and painted a single bar of silver across the floor. There, in the center, lay a low platform of flat stones, and upon it the bundled remains of a man long dead, wrapped in beaded buckskin, a single eagle feather still caught in what remained of his hair. Around the platform, scattered in careless heaps, were the dull yellow shapes of gold, nuggets the size of quail eggs, thin hammered sheets, a few rough bars stamped with markings Jack could not read. Enough wealth to buy a ranch, a new name, a life that did not end with a rope. Enough to make a man forget every promise he ever made to himself. Nita spoke from behind him. Our father was the last guardian. When the sickness took him he made us swear on his blood that no white hand would ever take what he protected. We have kept that promise for 7 winters. Loma moved to stand beside the platform, moonlight touching her face so she looked half spirit herself. But tonight, she said, we are tired of waiting for the next thief to come. Tonight we end the story. Jack felt the trap close like a bear's jaw. You're going to kill me and leave me here with him. No, Nita answered. We are going to give you a choice the others never had. Help us hide the gold deeper, in a place no map will ever find, and you walk out of this canyon with your life and your horse and nothing else. Refuse, and you join our father tonight. The choice is yours, but you will make it before the moon crosses that crack above us. He looked from one sister to the other, saw the iron in their eyes, the years of watching strangers ride in with greed on their faces, the nights they had sat beside this same dead man and waited. And he understood, suddenly and completely, that they had never intended to let him spend the night in the wigwam. The stew, the fire, the soft words, every moment since he rode down the slope had been a single long preparation for this cave, this moonlight, this final fork in the trail. He drew a slow breath. Show me where you want it moved, he said. They worked in silence. The gold was heavier than it looked, each nugget seemed to carry the weight of the mountain itself. They carried it deeper into the earth along a side passage Jack had not noticed, a crack so narrow he had to turn sideways, scraping skin from both shoulders. For hours they moved the horde, Jack carrying, Nita guiding, Loma keeping watch at the main chamber in case the night produced more visitors. When the last bar was placed in the new hiding place, a natural hollow behind a fallen slab that would take 10 strong men to move, they sealed it with smaller stones and packed the cracks with dry clay from the floor. Only then did Nita lower the knife. You kept your word, she said. That is more than most. Loma stepped close again, this time without threat, and pressed something into his hand, the eagle feather that had been in her father's hair. Take this, she whispered. Not as payment. As memory. So you remember there are things heavier than gold. They led him back out. The moon had traveled far, false dawn was graying the east. Dusty stood where he had left her, ears pricked, and the colt still hung untouched on the saddle. Jack mounted slowly, every muscle singing with fatigue. He looked down at the 2 women who had outplayed him from the first word. If I'd come looking for trouble, he said, I'd have found more than I could carry. Nita inclined her head. And if you ever come looking again, we will be waiting. Loma smiled then, the first true smile he had seen on her face. But perhaps next time bring better coffee. Ours is terrible. He touched the brim of his hat, turned Dusty's head west, and rode into the paling light without looking back. Behind him the wigwams waited, patient as the desert itself, and somewhere deep inside the mountain the gold slept on, guarded now not by one dead man but by two living women who had learned that the best trap is the one a man walks into with his eyes open and his hands empty. Jack Harlan never spoke of that night in saloons or around campfires. He kept the feather tucked inside his shirt, next to the skin, where it brushed his heart every time he drew breath. And on the longest, loneliest stretches of trail, when the wind carried the smell of sage and pine pitch, he sometimes thought he heard Loma's soft laugh riding the night air, reminding him that some debts are paid not in gold, but in the simple, astonishing mercy of being allowed to ride away.